So before we get into details, about every day on this unit, I like to just share some stories, some true stories, just to kind of emphasize what we're talking about and to kind of get you thinking of just how dangerous alcohol is in our society. The first story I want to share with you is a 100% true story, and one that I'm very familiar with. Now, this picture you see is not the actual family, but there was this young family, very similar to this, with just a young infant, and they were just starting their family. Well, one day they lived in Oakley, Utah. I don't know how many of you know where Oakley, Utah is. It's up above Park City. But one day they were coming back to their house in Oakley from visiting their grandparents in the young child's grandparent in Salt Lake. And they were about a fourth of a mile away from home. And as most of you know that have taken driver's ed, where most accidents occur within a mile of your own home. Well, they were just a fourth of a mile from home when they were going through an intersection, and a drunk driver ran a stop sign and T-boned the car, flipping that car over, and that car landed in a creek bed. Now, back then, this was about in 1959, by the way, and in 1959, they didn't have car seats. Most babies rode in on their lap of the mother. They didn't have air conditioning back then, other than driving however fast with your windows down was the only air conditioning. Well, when this car got T-boned, the 6-month-old baby flew out of the window and landed on the street. Was injured, nothing that was life-threatening, and the baby recovered. The father was injured quite severely with multiple broken bones, lacerated liver, had some real health problems, was in the hospital for about 6 months. And the young mother was killed. Now, the drunk driver went to jail, and back in 1959, the laws were not as severe as they are today, and he actually got out of jail before the father was out of the hospital. Now, the reason I know this story so well is that infant was my older sister, half sister, but she's my sister. The driver, the man that was put in the hospital, was my dad. And the lady that was killed was my sister's mother. And I watched for a lot of years as on particular holidays or different days, when I would say, for example, on Memorial Day or on my sister's birthday, that sometimes she would get tears in her eyes because she wanted to know what her mother was like. People would tell her, this is what your mother was like, and you have a lot of characteristics like your mother, but she never can remember anything about her mother. And she loves our mother now as much as anybody loves their mother. I've seen my dad with tears in his eyes, who loves my mother and his wife as much as any husband loves their wife, but I've seen him with tears in his eyes on certain days because he only got to spend a couple of years with the person that he loved. Now, this drunk driver had been pulled over a couple of other times for drunk driving. When he got out of jail, to his credit, he came and visited my father in the hospital. My dad said he was just sobbing, saying how sorry he was and how he wished that he could go back in time, which is a couple of things I want to talk about. Number one is our decisions don't just affect us right now. You can't go back and change things. And yes, that was courageous of him to say, I'm sorry, but it doesn't bring anybody back. It doesn't change anything. And he said something that I will mention quite a bit. He says, I wish I wouldn't have ever started drinking.